past is full of images that we immediately recognise. Fair maidens, knights on horseback, chivalry, romance, tales of King Arthur, King of the Britons, and his Knights of the Round Table. In 1344, King Edward III decided to turn the myth of Arthur into a reality. He set up his own order of the Knights of the Round Table, and he wanted it to be bigger and better than Arthur's. So his Round Table was for a group of 300 knights. He even commissioned a building for them. A building long since disappeared. But in 2006, Time Team found archaeological evidence of the building in Windsor Castle. We found a substantial wall, a circular one, which geophysics suggested was 200 feet in diameter. In another trench on the inside of the building, we found evidence of the building's floor. And we found substantial stonework.
Well, what we've clearly got is traces of slots for windows, the square holes into which the iron bars went, the ferraments as they're called.
Until we found it, no one knew for sure what this building had looked like. And no one really knew what it was for.
You think this huge scale?
In this film, Dr. Alice Roberts and archaeologist Julian Munby will help me to answer those questions. First step for me is to go to Windsor to remind us of what we found.
We come to the point where the geophysics shows us there's this huge curve in the grass, which is pointing towards about the fourth window over there.
So this is over here?
Over here, sweeping around here and a curve back into there, then coming round into here, where the trenches were, right round across, and we had to keep going right across the lawn, because it goes right over here, almost back into this window over there.
Yeah.
If you extend that curve on this plan, it very neatly fits inside the curtain wall of the castle.
It's kind of theory, though, isn't it? How do we know that there actually was anything there?
There's building accounts. The original building accounts survive. So we've actually got the weekly accounts of masons and labourers chopping up stone, bringing it here. And they work solidly throughout the year, from February to November.
Finding this was a big triumph for you, wasn't it?
It was really exciting, because we've got the chronicler telling us that the king had this great meeting here, planned the round table, and then started building this great 200-foot diameter building. The problem was we didn't know where it was.
The Round Table building was the brainchild of King Edward III. Edward was born in 1312 and became king at the age of 14. It was a difficult time. Edward's father had been thrown off the throne, and the country was in turmoil. But Edward managed to rule for over 50 years. And he is at the very heart of this story, because this building and the idea behind it were all down to him.
In 1344, Edward summoned everybody to a tournament at Windsor in January. He didn't actually say what it was for, it was just going to be a tournament. And at the end of the third day, he said, "You're not to go home until I've talked to you tomorrow."
Edward made two important announcements. He established a new order of knighthood, the Order of the Round Table, and he issued instructions for a building to house it. It was reported at the time by a chronicler.
The king was presented with the Bible, and laying his hand upon the Gospels, swore a solemn oath that he himself, at a certain time, provided that he had the necessary means, would begin a round table, in the same manner and condition as Arthur, former King of England, established it, namely to the number of 300 knights, and would cherish it and maintain it according to his power.
So clearly he was setting up a sort of an order of chivalry for 300 knights. Now that, you know, that's very interesting. But then immediately after this, in February, he started building the Round Table building, the building that carried on from February through to November.
In the year of grace 1344, which is the 18th year of Edward's reign, King Edward summoned many workers to Windsor Castle and began to build a house which was called the Round Table. Its size from the centre to the circumference, the radius, was 100 feet, and its diameter was therefore 200 feet.
Given the size of the Round Table building, it's incredible that we know so little about it. There aren't even any accounts of it having been finished, let alone used, and now it's all gone. Maybe if we want to find out what it was for, we need to look at where the idea for it came from. That idea, Edward III's idea, takes us back into the long, distant and mythical past, to Arthur, to the golden age of chivalry and the knights of the Round Table.
I gotta get out of here. Which way? I don't know. What am I looking for? Something I can't see. I can feel it. It's magic. Sauvage. Dior.
We all know finding the perfect gift can be difficult. With a huge range of perfumes and gift sets to suit everyone, we can help you get it right this Christmas. You know the person, we know the perfume. The Perfume Shop.
And it's also really fast.
3 for 2 on all toys at Tesco. Starts tomorrow.
Get up to £30 off Sonos wireless speakers like this Play 5 for just $3.99. Or this free GHD product bauble when you buy selected GHD Copper Lux styling sets. Get more out of giving. Get more out of every day with very.co.uk.
Struggling to get a credit card? Is it game over because you've got a poor credit score even though you're normally good with money? Or because you're on a low income despite the fact you're great at budgeting? At Aqua, we give credit where it's due, even if you've had problems with credit before. And we can give you a response in 60 seconds. So why not give us a go? Apply today at aquacard.co.uk. 18 years and over, UK residents and subject to status. Terms and conditions apply.
There's an amazing deal on BT Broadband. You can enjoy a 25% welcome discount and get a super reliable Wi-Fi connection. Plus, when you're out and about, you can connect to the UK's largest Wi-Fi network for free. It'll cost $24.99 a month on a 12-month contract. And that includes line rental. Don't miss the 25% welcome discount. Call 0800 006 800 or visit bt.com/deals.
Do you need help solving your laptop problems?
I've just got a laptop and I've been told that I should back up my files.
Well, I've got a printer, but I can't seem to connect it.
I'm concerned about security issues.
But we don't understand some of the terminology.
I don't know what cookies are.
Phishing.
Spam.
We'd like to prevent problems before they come about.
Our experts at Which have lots of advice to help you sort out those niggling laptop problems. They've put together a free, easy-to-follow laptop problem solved guide.
A good, clear guide.
The guide looks great.
It does look very simple to use.
For your free guide, call 0800 221 8784 and we'll help you get your laptop running smoothly. We'll show you how to speed up a sluggish laptop, get rid of viruses, solve email problems, sort out any Windows 10 issues, and there's our jargon buster to make sense of the techie bits.
That looks really good.
All the information's there. That's very clear.
Call 0800 221 8784 for your free laptop problem solved guide.
It's free as well.
That's amazing.
You don't get anything free these days.
That'll change my life then. I'm looking forward to reading this.
Fantastic. It's a great help. Thank you.
You've had an accident that wasn't your fault. You want help and you need legal advice. You don't need celebrity endorsements. You need an injury lawyer for you. That's why we're called Injury Lawyers for You. If you need our help, call us or visit us online.
Ready, steady, Christmas.
Moonpig.com.
These guys don't agree Kate's Secret Santa is appropriate for the workplace. They do agree 2 buckets of chicken for 15 pounds is a mighty good deal.
After Hitler,
starts Sunday at 9, new and exclusive to yesterday.
Windsor Castle, the Queen's favourite home. Under this lawn, we found evidence that there had once been a huge circular building, the Round Table Building. For centuries, no one knew where it was. But they did know it had been built because the building accounts still exist.
Salute him. Have you got salute?
Salute him, yeah,
that's greeting.
just about keeping up with you there.
He's saying.
In the National Archives at Kew, this extraordinary roll of accounts paints a pretty accurate picture of what happened back in 1344 when the building was being constructed.
Sisore is the word they actually use, the cutting masons.
Yeah.
And then they actually have a list and they give the numbers and how much they're paid. And then on the right-hand end, £4,
Yep.
6 shillings and 8 pence.
Doesn't sound like enough.
Old-fashioned money, which I was brought up with before your time.
So, Tim, this is obviously incredibly detailed. If you add up all of these people, can you actually work out how many people were constructing this building?
Precisely. That's what this whole document tells you, every single person who was paid, beginning mid-February right through to November when the work stopped. And it tells you exactly how many people there were, because this first week they got 30 or so cutting masons. And by March, the third or fourth week, there are over 700 people here. Then towards the end, the numbers drop right the way down. And we know that by November, when obviously the weather's bad anyway, the numbers are very few.
The accounts tell us what materials were used in the building. They give us the first clue as to what the building might have looked like. But there's also a description of it. In the 1340s, in a text called Perce Forest, is a description of a round building 200 feet across.
Now you need to know what the Great Hall was like. The diameter of the hall was more than 200 feet. Right around the hall curved a marble table, most beautifully made, and it ran so close to the windows that anyone sitting at the table would be resting his back against the tower wall. The two ends of the table finished in front of the hall's main door, and such was its circumference that it could seat fully 300 knights abreast.
In this workshop in North London, archaeologist Julian Munby has come to meet with Martin Godward, a model maker. We're going to try and make a model of the building. As always, the devil is in the detail.
When we come to draw this up, is there any of this which is fixed? Anything we know which is definitely correct? Or
the diameter.
Right.
We're set on the diameter of 200 feet.
Yeah.
We know the thickness of the walls because we've excavated them. And from that, we're estimating that it's a single-storey building, and therefore it's that high.
If we get this right, it'll be the first time in almost 700 years that this building will have been seen. In Windsor Castle, there are some clues as to what the building might have looked like. The different types of stone in this wall were also used in the Round Table Building. Each type had a different purpose. The trouble for someone like me being confronted with a building as complex as Windsor Castle is it's really difficult to work out how old it is. I can see that basically all this stuff must be pretty old because it's all rough and angular, and obviously there was something here earlier that's been hacked away. But when you come to this, presumably it's newer than that just because it's much neater. Help me, Tim, how old is this?
Well, you've come to exactly the right place, because this was built only a few years after the Round Table Building in the early 1350s. And this is where you have all the types of stone that were used in the Round Table Building, as we know from the documentary evidence. For example, this fairly obviously looks like chalk. It is chalk, but there are two types of chalk. There's the local chalk, which came down the Thames from Bisham, just a few miles west here. But there's also slightly greyer, the hard chalk. This is Tottenham stone coming from the lower chalk to the north. And then you can see that is what is used for this wonderful tracery here of this early perpendicular window. Very high quality work. But then the greeny stone in various places, this is Reigate stone. But then the doorway just behind you here, you see is yellower. This is carstone from Normandy, more expensive to bring in for really good carved work.
So this wall is similar to what we would have had in the Round Table?
I think very much so. You've just got to turn it into a curve, and these are the sort of doors and windows that you would expect to have in the Round Table building.
The building was the brainchild of King Edward III. Born in 1312, he became king at the age of 14. At his birth, a prophecy was read out. Edward was going to be a great king. He had a lot to live up to. Edward came to the throne at a really difficult time. His father, Edward II, had been a really shambolic figure, and support for him had fractured. In fact, he'd been kicked off the throne by his wife and her lover. So there's young Edward, he's in his teens, he's newly crowned, and immediately he's got to grapple with the realities of power. He's got to win it back, and then he's got to hold on to it.
The key point to understanding Edward III is he had this desperate need to prove himself. He's prophesied to be a great king, not just any old king. He is prophesied to be the greatest king that England has known. He is going to be the new Arthur. He's prophesied to sharpen his teeth on the gates of Paris. He's prophesied to reconquer all his ancestral lands. He has got to prove himself, otherwise this prophecy is not going to come true.
The problem, of course, at the beginning of his reign had been that his father had been very unpopular and had indeed been deposed by the nobility. Edward himself, therefore, had to begin from scratch in winning the nobility back over.
He grows up as this sort of minor figure at a court, whereby his mother and her lover have taken power, and they are inhibiting his reign. He isn't able to be a king. He's not able to be as responsible to his people as he hopes. And so he has to prove himself as a military leader, as well as having this prophecy to live up to. Everything comes down to him proving himself.
So, insecure and fearful of his position as king, Edward needed to get the nobility on his side. He looked to the greatest king of all, King Arthur. Although we now know that our images of Arthur are mythical, King Arthur and his knights were very real to people in the Middle Ages. Edward loved the vision of the Knights of the Round Table. They were a band of brothers fighting together in support of the king. Edward wanted loyalty like that. Within a couple of years of assuming the throne, Edward faced a threat from both the French and the Scots. He needed men, trained men and loyal men. So he set about trying to find them. In the 14th century, Warwick Castle was important, one of the handful of places licensed to hold jousts. Edward III jousted here. Today, it's a medieval fun fair. People come to get a taste of what life was like then, and it looks much the same as it did.
This is certainly what would spring to my mind, say the word jousting, this is it. But how close is this to what would have happened in Edward III's time?
Oh, really pretty close. It's the right size of place, it's the right sort of atmosphere, the right tents. A lot of things about it are really very close to what would have gone on.
And we've got knights on horseback decked out in this regalia. Would it have looked similar?
Yes, because they all had these terrific sort of shows of heraldry to show who they were. And that terrific colour is absolutely right again, particularly for that period. Edward's was a great one for display, and that's what this jousting is all about, display.
Tournaments were very important to Edward. He could prove himself to be, like Arthur, a victorious king, and it helped him win the support of the nobility that he desperately needed. Tournaments were his way of gathering them together, so he held as many as he could.
We're talking about one every month, really. We're talking about Edward III taking part personally and not being afraid to be beaten.
The tournament was most useful as a way of practicing for battle. Jousting was a means of training.
basically what you're doing is you're keeping him in practice for something that didn't happen by any means every day. I mean, there was always fighting in the background, but there was not necessarily an opportunity for the average knight to fight continuously for any length of time. And this is where the tournament comes in, because the skills in the tournament are identical to the ones you need on the battlefield. And this was basically what a knight expected to do when he went into battle. The first thing he would do would charge the enemy with a lance. They got to be able to handle arms while they were in the saddle. All this is stuff that you learn in the tournament.
But the tournament was also an opportunity for the great and the good to come together. Edward took advantage of this. The tournament wasn't just a time for entertainment. It was a time for doing business. Edward turned the tournament into a political event.
The gathering together of the great men of the realm for a ceremonial occasion, which will also, in effect, be a kind of great council. It will be, to all intents and purposes, a meeting of the great politicians of the realm, at which all sorts of things can actually be discussed and decided. Tournaments, therefore, under royal patronage, become a very important and effective means of political manipulation and ordering.
The scale of his ambition meant that Edward needed money. At that time, noblemen were all fighting men. To be a knight meant you needed to be wealthy enough to have horses, armour, fighting equipment, staff to look after everything. The greatest knights owned the land, and they sat in Parliament. Through Parliament, they could raise taxes to pay for a war. So to get the money he needed, Edward had to meet Parliament. And Parliament then was different. Nowadays, the House of Lords and the House of Commons sit separately. The House of Lords is down there and the Commons is through there, with a bit of jousting in the middle here, sometimes in the central lobby. But prior to the 1340s, everyone sat together, and that space through there, which is now a rather grand hallway and which was known as St Stephen's Chapel, is where Parliament was held. Sometimes. This is York Minster, and this is the Chapter House. In the 14th century, Parliament was held in chapter houses around the country.
And Edward III did come here, didn't he, and did use it?
Oh yes, Edward III was married in the Minster, but used this room during his campaigns against the Scots to hold Parliament.
Oh,
so
really?
he held Parliament here on at least 2 occasions that we know of, because he was based in York for several years.
So Parliament was a movable feast?
Parliament was wherever the king was.
Right.
Parliament wasn't a building, it was a body.
It's very sort of equal, isn't it? All of the niches are sort of arranged. It doesn't seem to be a sort of a top seat.
No, that's actually really important in this design, because there are 44 seats. Although the dean sits over there, he's not, as you say, at the top table. It's the idea of the sort of the first among equals. There's an even number of seats all spread around.
Parliament sat here and in other rooms like this. It could be that it was seeing these rooms that gave Edward the idea for the design of the Round Table building.
Equally, the 300 knights of the projected Round Table is an even number. And I think we can see here some of the ideas that may have lay behind the design. The idea of wall seating, of stone benches around the walls, of an individual niche for each knight. It's all those ingredients that go into the design of the House of the Round Table.
And logistically, I mean, how does this work as a meeting space? It sounds really echoey standing here.
Sounds echoey standing here, but if you sit in your seats and speak clearly when you're standing on your sill in front of your seat, then you'll be able to be heard perfectly clearly. But if you stand in the middle of the room, and particularly if you start shouting, the echoes will just bounce everywhere and you won't be able to hear.
Should we try it?
Absolutely.
Let's.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go over here.
So if I stand here and talk slowly and carefully, you can probably hear me quite well. But if I start walking into the middle of the room and shouting, talking around the place and then turn away and walk away from it. What about is that anything I'm saying at all now? That's completely garbled.
Clearly it works all right if you speak one at a time in an orderly fashion, as is suitable for courtesy and chivalry on these occasions.
Chapter houses were generally this shape, a great space for meetings. But there's a huge difference between 44 people sitting in a circle and 300. Which begs the question, what was the Round Table building really designed for? The answer to this question might well lie here, in a castle in the Mediterranean.
This is me, Leanne. I'm a student now, but my life wasn't always like this, which is why I'm asking for your help this Christmas. Please text HELP to 66010 or visit centrepoint.org.uk/TV to give £3 today. When I was little, my stepdad was a drinker. He'd always tell me I was in the way. Then my mum died, and he said I had to pay my way in his house. Made me do things I didn't want to do. So I left. By 17, I was homeless. There were lots of scary people about. I still have nightmares. That's why I'm asking you to sponsor a Centrepoint room now. Thankfully, people like you helped me get a room at Centrepoint. It's safe here. People want to help me. They've taught me how to apply for jobs, plan for the future, and best of all, I'm studying to be a midwife. For the first time, I started to believe things might be okay. But I was lucky. There are thousands of young people who desperately need somewhere safe. It doesn't cost much to help someone, save someone like me. This Christmas, please give a homeless young person something that's been taken away, the chance to live a decent, happy life. Text HELP to 66010 or visit centrepoint.org.uk/TV to give £3 today.
Let's face it, vacuuming can be a pain. Shackled by the weight and tethered by the cord. The minute you finish, more mess appears. And do we really want to touch the dirt when we empty? I designed the powerful new G-Tech AirRam to help you break free. You get high-performance cordless cleaning, even on embedded pet hair. It glides from carpet to hard floor with no settings to change. And its new airlock feature picks up big bits from the surface and fine dust from deep down. The AirRam gives you up to 40 minutes powerful cleaning. Plenty to do your home twice. Good dog. The dirt is compacted into a bale and empties with a slide. Order your G-Tech AirRam today for £199 with free delivery. Call now or find out more at gtech.co.uk.
You've had an accident that wasn't your fault. You want help and you need legal advice. You don't want social media experts. You don't want strangers calling your home. You don't need celebrity endorsements. You need an injury lawyer for you. That's why we're called Injury Lawyers for You. Each case we take comes with our no-win, no-fee promise. If you need our help, call us or visit us online.
Sore throat keeping you awake?
Yes, and I need a good night's sleep.
Take Strepsils. It relieves pain, fights the infection and soothes your throat. It helps put your sore throat pain to sleep.
If you want a great deal on broadband, PlusNet can help you out. Unlimited broadband and line rental from just £18 a month for 18 months. Hurry! Unlimited broadband and your line rental from one simple monthly price of just £18. Offer ends 6th of December. Great service at a great price. Call 0800 028 8888 now. PlusNet will do you proud.
Inhabiting a historical space in an historical costume gives you a discipline. You stand differently, you hold yourself differently. There's a Regency posture. It sounds like it should be constricting, but it can actually be really liberating.
Sense and Sensibility, Sunday from 12 on Drama.
There's only one channel called Drama.
This is Mallorca, and this is Belver Castle. It's a bizarre contradiction. Here I am in the middle of the Mediterranean, the sun's shining, I've got my shorts on and my peaked cap, and yet it's only here that I can get a real sense of what the Round Table building would have felt like in the middle of Windsor on a rainy afternoon. Belver Castle was built in Mallorca at the start of the 14th century. King Edward III would have known of it, as he was in constant touch with the King of Mallorca in the early 1340s, trying to broker a marriage deal between the two royal families. The castle had 2 floors and rooms the whole way around the outside. It's a very unusual castle. Castles weren't round. If we'd been standing in the middle of the Round Table building, is this what it would have felt like?
I think this is about the only place where we can actually get an experience of what it was like. Because it's a large round space, it's surrounded by an arcade, and there's a vaulted ceiling above that.
So what are the differences?
The differences are, it's on 2 stories. This has got a sort of storage level below, and the other rooms of the castle upstairs. We don't think the Round Table had other spaces behind.
The quality of the stonework and the intricacy of it reflect what our Round Table building would have been like. It would have had a vaulted ceiling like this one. But most importantly at Belver, there's the size. The scale of this place is really impressive. If you look round the outside walls, this is a very big building. And yet what I find so remarkable is that you could drop this entire castle inside the Round Table building in Windsor. Belver's size gives us a different perspective on the Round Table building. It's much bigger than I thought it would be. So in a field outside Windsor Castle, we're trying to work out what size the building would have been on the ground. What could it have been used for?
This is the centre of the building.
Okay.
The building is 200 foot in diameter. That gives us a radius of 100 feet, and we're going to measure out 100 feet.
Okay. Than you think.
It is much further than you think. And here we are, 98, 99, 100. That's 100 feet.
So that's going to make...
That's pretty big, isn't it?
It's going to be a large circle, but I think that we need some people to really show us what it would look like with all the knights sitting around the outside.
What, you've got 300 knights, have you?
No. But I've got 100 knights at the Round Table.
Let's give it a whirl.
Knights of the Round Table, would you like to come and take your seats in the Round Table building? People around the outside, and I reckon there's easily enough room for another 200.
I think we've shown that there is plenty of room for 300 knights to sit quite comfortably in their stone seats around the marble table.
So doing a bit of feasting, but I mean, as for talking, I mean, when we tried out York Minster and tried talking across the space, it worked. But what about talking across this space?
Do you want me to give it a try?
Go on then.
Oh,
go on. Go on, Julian, run! Faster!
How about that then? Can you hear me?
Only just.
I said, can you hear me?
Only just.
This is a huge space, clearly useless for meetings. So what on earth can you do in a space this size?
Right, here in the centre. Can you hear me now? And of course, if it was a stone building, it would reflect the sound better. We'd actually get that bouncing back in.
But it's still not the sort of place where you'd have a meeting or a parliament, is it?
No, but it's just an amazing place.
Well, back in Belver Castle in Mallorca, the only real reason screams out. Standing inside the central arena, I just know that this is really a performance space. It's not a meeting space. It feels like a theatre in the round. Perhaps the fact that this place is laid out for a concert proves the point. It's tantalising not to be able to know quite how much performance took place here.
It is. There's wonderful records, we've got building accounts for it, but we know very little about how the place was actually used.
If I owned this place, I'd be doing shows all the time. Bang up on the stage. Thus did Arthur seize the handle of Excalibur and pull it from the stone. It's great. The sheer size of the Round Table building, the architecture we see at Windsor and that of Belver, enables us to work out what the Round Table building might have looked like. Putting all that together with the archaeology and documentary evidence, this is what we think it looked like. This is our model. It was a huge, impressive building. There were seats for 300 around the edges, columns supporting a roof with a vaulted ceiling to cover the people sitting around the outside, and a big central arena. And remember, this is bigger than Belver. It's a massive space. So if it wasn't intended for meetings but for performance, what would Edward's 300 knights have been watching in here? Richard Barber's got this really interesting idea. He thinks that the Round Table building might have been the start of organised theatre in England. This is the Globe Theatre, Shakespeare's Globe. It too is a big circular building. It's got a central arena with seating around the edges. Richard, it seems to me perfectly obvious that they would have used the Round Table building for performance. These big round spaces are so theatrical, aren't they? But that's just my gut reaction as an actor. What makes you sure that there were some kind of shows going on there?
It doesn't work as a real jousting space. It doesn't work just for feasting. It must have had some other purpose. So you're already into performance of some sort. And I think the answer is that this is all to do with the kind of performances they did put on at court.
What would the plays have been about?
Well, the chief theme of the plays would have been reenactments of romances. We do have some scripts which tell us the kind of thing that they were going to do, and they are centred on reworking the romances about King Arthur.
I always think of performance in those times as being religious moral tales, and yet here's Edward running through the whole panoply of the Arthurian legends. Why?
Well, he was the great sort of British hero. He had been, in the legends, he'd been the ruler of France, and Edward was trying to be ruler of France. He'd been the ruler of Scotland, and Edward was trying to be the ruler of Scotland. So he was a wonderful precedent.
Edward wanted to be better than King Arthur. Like Arthur, he set up his own Round Table of Knights. And then he even went so far as to construct somewhere to house them. The Round Table building was really built in honour of King Arthur. But why?
He draws upon the stories of Arthur to encourage people to fight for him. If you've got prophecies which say you are going to be a great king, and you act as if you are a great king, as great as Arthur, people are likely to follow you. If you don't live up to those prophecies, people are going to begin to doubt them. So he uses the prophecies, he uses the romances, he uses the excitement of adventure to get everybody on his side. Edward is extremely excited by romances, and by romances we're talking about fantastic stories. We're not talking about love stories, we're talking about pursuing Holy Grail, talking about knights fighting each other for good causes. There is this chivalric, romantic element in Edward. It really gives him a vision of how he can inspire people, and his whole life is really a romance.
King Arthur represents an idyllic view of the monarchy. Arthur is seen as the king of kings, even by other kings. In the past, many of them looked to him for inspiration. This is the country's most famous round table. It hangs in the Great Hall in Winchester.
Oh, it's extraordinary, isn't it? It totally dominates this medieval hall.
It is. It's absolutely magnificent.
But is it anything to do with King Arthur?
Well, strictly speaking, Tony, not.
Ah.
That table was built by Edward I around 1290 for a tournament that was held in Winchester. And then his grandson, Edward III, had its legs cut off and hoisted up there to sort of dominate this hall. And then the painting that made it look like a dartboard, that was done 100 years later by Henry VIII. And if you look at King Arthur at the top, he's very four-square with a big bushy beard, looks remarkably like Henry VIII.
So Henry VIII repainted it?
Yes.
Trying to recapture the old Arthurian tradition?
Well, they all are. Edward I, Edward III, Henry VIII. They all want to tap into the once and future king.
It is a magnificent piece of woodwork.
It is.
Living up to Arthur, recapturing his traditions, became important to Edward III. The mythical English king, surrounded by good and loyal knights, all prepared to fight for their sovereign. This was Edward's dream.
The king sat down to a table, and at the same time he had the lords of the Round Table seated with him in chairs, just as King Arthur had done when he held a feast, as we have often read. In similar fashion, then, Edward now ordered these knights to take their seats.
Edward's Round Table building was a first attempt to be better than King Arthur. His Round Table would hold 300, many more than Arthur's, so he spent a fortune on it. Across most of 1344, hundreds of men worked on the building. Stonemasons, carpenters, labourers. But in November 1344, the work stopped. And we can get clues as to why by looking at what else was going on in Edward's life at the time. He had a new priority. For 7 years, he'd been battling with the French. Edward now had to achieve what the mythical Arthur had. He had to defeat his enemies.
In 1344, there is this decision in Parliament that Edward should go to France and finish the job. Parliament sends him to France to fight the Crécy campaign, and they say he should finish the job within 2 years.
What we need to remember is that in 1344, he is already beginning to plan that great campaign that in 1346 will lead to the Battle of Crécy, and that everything he does through this process in gathering together the great men of the realm will be angled towards forging that strong sense of military community and commitment to a common enterprise that will lead forward to military victory.
At Windsor, the building work stopped. Through 1345, Edward was busy preparing for 2 major battles. In 1346, he defeated the French at Crécy, and then the next year at Calais. These were monumental victories.
The significance of Crécy cannot be underestimated. The shockwaves that must have travelled across Europe after Crécy were phenomenal. It simply had never happened before that a relatively small kingdom had come to France, taken on the greatest army in Christendom, with the King of France at its head, and not just defeated them, but practically destroyed them.
The victory at Crécy transforms England in the sense that God has shown that he is on the king's side. The English think that they are invincible. They think that they can now go ahead and either fight further for the king's claims in France or effect a very, very successful peace.
Edward returned from France victorious. He had now proved himself. He was triumphant and popular, a truly powerful king. Edward had new confidence. Before defeating the French, he'd spent years trying to win over the nobility. The Round Table building and the idea of 300 knights had been part of that. But now he could behave like a real king. He didn't need the building because he didn't need to attract 300 people. Rather than have all comers welcome, he would choose a select band. He set up a new order of chivalry, one that's still with us today.
This is the Holy of Holies. You really know that you've made it as a member of the British establishment if you get one of these. You can only have one if the Queen gives it to you. It's yours for life, and there are only 24 of them.
Thank you. It's not hard to say, is it? So will you say thank you to someone who gave everything to our country?
All I ever wanted to do was serve my country. I guess you could say it was my calling. I'd join again tomorrow if I could.
Malliam loved being a soldier, and he was the best son and brother you could wish for. And I miss him every day.
Humbling, isn't it? But now our brave servicemen and women and their families need your support. They need you to call SAFA, the Armed Forces charity that helps over 50,000 people every year. Please call 0800 038 0561 or text now to give just £2 a month. With your help, SAFA can be there to give families practical and emotional support. You can let extraordinary heroes lead ordinary lives when they get home. You can make sure that those left behind aren't left to struggle alone. We must never forget the sacrifices people have made for us. Today and in the past, we must be there for them. After all our brave servicemen and women do for us, let's show them we care. Please call 0800 038 0561 or text thanks to 78866 and give just £2 a month to support SAFA. It's the least we can do to say thank you.
What about eating fries without feeling guilty? Actifry Express by Tefal. With just 1 spoonful of oil, you can prepare low-fat chips quickly, plus many other recipes. Ideas you can't live without.
When Sam came down with a burning fever, I gave him some Nurofen for children, which provides fever relief for up to 8 hours. So we all ended up having a good night's sleep. Sort of. Nurofen for children tackles fever quickly and lasts up to 8 hours. So they can get a full night's sleep. And so can you.
Introducing our first flower diffuser. It changes colour while diffusing scent. Home Signature by Airwick.
For powerful and effective constipation relief, we've harnessed natural senna and put it into Senacot to help restore your regular movement. Senacot.
Get up to £30 off Sonos wireless speakers like this Play 5 for just $399. Or this free GHD product bauble when you buy selected GHD Copper Lux styling sets. Get more out of giving. Get more out of every day with very.co.uk.
E is for every day. Effective moisturising. Everything you need for healthy feeling skin. E45. And try our fast absorbing E45 24-hour moisturising sprays.
Seal It Bang, Limescale and Shine. Experience the instant power formula and its incredible efficiency on limescale and dirt. Seal It Bang's instant power works so quickly on limescale it almost makes cleaning exciting.
With Perfect Home, you can get all your creature comforts and pay weekly. The perfect sofa. The perfect washing machine. The perfect telly. Whoa. And you can get your paws on all the perfect tech. Sure. Shop now at perfecthome.co.uk. To pay weekly for the things you want, it's got to be Perfect Home.
Lemsip Max Day and Night Cold and Flu has day capsules to help you through your day and night capsules to help you enjoy a restful sleep.
This season, good food is Christmas food.
Bold cider.
Got to have Brussels sprouts.
The best gravy ever. Roast potatoes and the roast parsnips.
It's not Christmas without a turkey.
The essential season's eatings. This season on Christmas food.
Safe travels, don't die, don't die. Safe travels, don't die, don't die.
The stakes could not be higher.
Sir David Attenborough narrates. The Hunt starts the 13th of December at 9, new to Eden.
It's Ascot Week, and on the Monday afternoon, the Queen meets in Windsor with the Knights of the Garter. The Order of the Garter is the oldest chivalric order in the world. It has just 24 members, plus the Sovereign and the Prince of Wales. It was founded in 1348 by King Edward III. Just 4 years after Edward announced his great round table building project down there, and 3 years after it was abandoned, he came up with the idea of the Order of the Garter. This wasn't going to be an ordinary group. It was going to be highly exclusive, only 24 knights in total. And just 650 years later, there have still been only 998 in all.
It was very deliberately an exclusive club. Very private, very elite, kept very, very small, in order that everybody else should aspire to it. Edward is seeking through the foundation of the Garter to create an inner circle of highly privileged individuals who have proved themselves in the heat of battle and in the council chamber as absolutely loyal to the crown.
This is the home of the Knights of the Garter. St George's Chapel in Windsor. It's their building, their equivalent of the Round Table building. For centuries, they've processed here. This is the inner sanctum.
Are we allowed to sit down?
Yes. Yes, of course.
As a Knight of the Garter, you have a special relationship with the monarch.
The garter is put on you and the chain by the Queen herself. And it's accompanied by the most marvellous words, which I imagine are translated from the original medieval French. And I remember particularly, wear this robe of heavenly colour, blue robe. Wear this collar round your neck. And then there's the words, to your honour, and let this be a symbol of St George, the martyr, and whose example you should follow.
St George, Arthur, the great figures of England's past. Even today's knights still echo that past. These people are marked out as the most loyal of subjects. They're still a close-knit group, just as Edward had wanted.
You are a group of friends. There is a sort of feeling of intimacy about it. I feel great affection for it because it is the most wonderful honour. And also, most of the other knights and ladies of the Garter are very old friends.
Yes, but you do realise you're confirming my prejudices that the people at the top of our society all know each other.
Well, yes, but I mean, it was always thus, wasn't it? I mean, you know, when Edward III founded this order, it was his close companions, his knights. And so, yes, it was always, I suppose, the close establishment.
In many ways, today's knights differ little from the knights of the 14th century. These knights may not have swords and horses, but they're as much a band of brothers as Edward's first knights were. They all wielded real power. There are captains of industry, former prime ministers, and friends of the royal family. Surrounded by people like this, Edward had a new power base. He had the support of the most powerful people in the country. The result was a period of unprecedented stability, and England grew and became stronger.
England was a minor part of an island off the coast of Europe at the beginning of his reign, relatively poor by comparison with France, militarily not very strong by comparison with France or any of the other countries, large countries in Europe, and economically relatively weak. By the end of his reign, it's economically strong, militarily strong, and respected throughout Christendom.
People recognised in Edward a man who had established law and order, who had, for 50 years, managed to avoid the spectre of civil war. That long period of domestic peace must surely be Edward's great achievement.
The Round Table building marked one phase of Edward's life. It was a big idea, a way of gathering a lot of supporters close to him, with an order of 300 knights. But after his victory at Crecy, he came up with a new idea. A small, tight-knit group seemed to be just right. The Order of the Garter replaced the Order of the Round Table.
The Order of the Round Table was entirely appropriate for a king who was aspiring to be a major chivalric figure, perhaps the major chivalric figure in Western Europe. The Order of the Garter was the accomplishment of a king who had won, who had achieved that status. That's the big difference between the two of them.
From Edward's own death through to the time of Shakespeare, the model of successful kingship in England was in many respects Edward III.
In the 17th century, Edward III is described as perhaps the greatest king the world has ever known. Not just England, perhaps the greatest king the world has ever known. And that really is something to reflect on.
The Round Table building at Windsor Castle had been lost for hundreds of years. But we found it, and through it we ended up looking at the man behind it. This building was a stepping stone in Edward III's success. From there, he went on to be one of this country's most successful kings. Edward was a king loved by all, as great a king as Arthur. Behind him was a band of brothers in arms, ready to lay down their lives. The mythical Round Table of Knights was now real.
From fascinating facts about archaeology to the Second World War via natural history and science. Learn more by following us on Twitter.
Inhabiting a historical space in an historical costume gives you a discipline. You stand differently, you hold yourself differently. There's a regency posture. It sounds like it should be constricting, but it can actually be really liberating.
Sense and Sensibility, Sunday from 12 on Drama.
There's only one channel called Drama.
There are some mysteries that have never been explained. Until now.
They were taken aboard a spacecraft. They were physically assaulted.
an upright, man-like creature, 8 or 9 feet tall.
Using groundbreaking technology, scientists analyze key evidence to uncover the truth behind some of the world's most bizarre urban myths.
There's no question that these are missing elements of the equation.
We know for a fact that we have something different.
True Supernatural starts Thursday, 8th of December, new and exclusive to Really.
Every day, history is traded all over the world. Poignant, bizarre, and unique items that may never have been seen in public before. A fascinating and often untold tale lies behind every object.
It looks pretty gruesome, but actually the reality behind it is probably far more gruesome than the object itself.
This may be our last chance to see them before they disappear forever into private collections. Our quest? To unearth extraordinary objects drawn from every corner of the world and reveal the amazing hidden histories behind them.
My father was shot down by this man at Schnaufer. His plane is right at the top. The 29th of June, 1943.
The fjords of Norway. During the Second World War, these quiet waters were to witness the near-total destruction of one of Germany's greatest battleships, the Tirpitz. The Tirpitz was at the time one of the largest warships in the world, built by the Nazis to attack the Allies at sea. Armed with 8 15-inch guns in 4 towers, she was a Goliath of the seas. So Herculean were the Allies' efforts to bring this mighty symbol of the German war machine to its knees, that it's a miracle anything now remains of it. But it does.
The Tirpitz was bombed and torpedoed, and even after all that, this clock, thanks to German engineering and a bit of luck, it survived.
So how did this naval timepiece come to be here in Britain, in perfect condition, some 70 years after the end of the war? The 60,000-ton Tirpitz was commissioned in 1941, 10 months before America entered the Second World War. She was deployed to Norwegian waters to harass Russia-bound convoys and deter an Allied invasion via German-occupied Norway. Her presence was a continual thorn in the side of the British Navy.
She was a potential threat to the Russian convoy route, tying up strong forces of British warships in northern waters. She had to be sunk.
Sinking her was the objective. But for 3 years, Tirpitz used smoke to evade Allied bombs. Then, on the 29th of October 1944, their luck changed. British Lancaster bombers found their target moored off the Norwegian coast.
In these British films, the Tirpitz is seen firing her 15-inch guns as the second attack was attempted on 29th October. However, the RAF managed to score 1 hit with a 12,000-pounder.
These are very, very big bombs. They were designed to burst through almost anything, including a battleship, and they certainly did.
The Tirpitz was struck. One bomb had smashed through her hull and damaged the engines. The Germans decided it wasn't practical to repair her, which meant she was no longer seaworthy. But, despite being moored in the waters, her guns could still be used to repel incoming Allied forces.
The Tirpitz's last position was essentially as a floating battery, and it was moored in shallow water.
But the Tirpitz's 15-inch guns were still lethal. They had to be silenced, for good.
4 a.m., Sunday, 12th November. RAF Lancasters take off on a 1,200-mile flight to Norway, where the Tirpitz, last of Germany's big battleships, had eluded 2 recent attacks. The Germans finally are caught by surprise. There is no smoke screen, and direct hits are scored.
This time, the RAF had the newly developed 12,000-pound tallboy bomb, which, when dropped from a great height, could penetrate the battleship's double layer of armor plating.
Germans. They'd underestimated how big the bombs were. The bombs literally ripped the side out of the ship, blew up some of the magazines, and then turned it over. And it tells you something about the impact of 12,000 pounds of very high explosive when it can turn over 60,000 tons of steel. And essentially with the damage on one side and the